This franchise is so dysfunctional. You know, any other ball franchise would blow a guy out, no questions asked, after a 4-12 season. The entire staff. Instead, you know, they bring him back, they make him, or some, you know, Telesco probably told him who to fire, Frank Reich, and then a bunch of other assistants. Ball coach doesn't have to fall on his sword. He's back, hooray. It's the Charger way.
Welcome to the Reindl Report, a podcast out of San Diego, California that rewrites the definition of mediocrity.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
So come along for the ride as Paul Reindl takes you through the world of sports with insight, interviews, and incredibly bad jokes.
It just seems like the people that are so butthurt about it.
Did you throw a butthurt out there?
Yeah, I said butthurt.
2005 called. They want their turn back.
Yeah, walked right into that one.
Now, here's your host, Paul Reindl.
All right. Welcome to it. Episode 33 of the Reindl Report. My name is Paul Reindl, host of the Reindl Report. Thanks for the time. Thanks for listening in today. Really appreciate it. Got a lot to talk about, a lot to get to, a lot happening going on in San Diego as far as sports go. I mean, from the Gulls, who just went on a 8-9 game winning streak, to San Diego State making the Las Vegas Bowl after winning their second consecutive Mountain West championship. Even to the Chargers, who did it again and blew a lead at halftime and a fourth quarter collapse and whatever you want to call it. They lost. That's the end all be all of the last result is they lost that game to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and their season is now over. And I'll talk a little bit about the Chargers now, but I'm going to talk about them a lot later on as well, because you heard that voice there at the top of the show. That was a little clip from Bernie Wilson, longtime sports writer for the Associated Press here in San Diego, on Twitter at Bernie Wilson. He's going to join the show. That guy's a bro. And if you follow him on Twitter already, you know why I'm saying that. It's because Bernie, he's a jokester. He calls everybody's a bro with Bernie. And so looking forward to that, get his thoughts on the Aztecs as well as the Chargers. But I'll stay on the Chargers for a little bit. I mean, look, I just talked about how their season's over, right? I said last week it was on life support, and now it's over. I mean, there's technically still 4 games left to play, but it's over. And there's just not a whole lot left to talk about the Chargers. There's Mike McCoy's job security. Will he be returning? Talks certainly seem to have been happening over the last couple of weeks. I mean, that conversation's really been picking up, at least around the media and with fans. And a lot more of the consensus now seems to be that, yeah, they're going to bring him back. They're going to bring Mike McCoy back. I don't understand why. I really don't. I do not know the answer to that. He is a coach that, at best, they can go 9-7, and they're probably not going to win out. Would be my best guess. And I know that the team has just been absolutely crushed with injuries. And sure, there was a couple of games where you can't directly put the loss on Mike McCoy. It has to fall on the players and execution, tipped passes, balls coming off the hands, not holding the snap for a field goal to tie the game, whatever. But majority of the blame needs to go on Mike McCoy for some of the decisions that he's making, the fact that the Chargers never have any timeouts in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, when it's like, dude, every game has been decided by 7 points or less. Like, you know it's going to come down to the fourth quarter. Why do you keep wasting your timeouts in the third quarter? It's because the players, they're having trouble, the coaching staff's having trouble getting the play into the players. They're sitting there in the huddle like, what are they saying? I don't know what to do. And then Rivers doesn't like what he sees, or McCoy doesn't like what he sees, and they got to call a timeout and just burn one there. At some point, that's got to fall on the coach. So it's going to be a coach that's going to spend literally the entire season. They're not going to catch Denver in third place. They're going to spend the entire season in the cellar, and they're going to bring Mike McCoy back. I don't really understand that. But when you look at the body of work over the last several years of Mike McCoy, I mean, what's appealing there? I certainly don't see it. Not enough to get a contract extension, a multi-year extension. I mean, remember they brought him back this year on a 1-year deal, so they're not going to do that again. If they bring Mike McCoy back, it's going to be on like a 3-4 year contract, and it baffles me. But at the end of the day, I guess it would be a very San Diego Chargers thing to do, because a lot of decisions that they make baffle me at some one point or another. That being said, what did I take away from the game? I mean, Phillip Rivers struggled, had an okay game. I mean, threw that pick six, that wasn't on him. Ball hit, I want to say it was Inman, hit Dontrelle Inman right in the hands, popped up. It was on the 15-yard line. Defender scoops it up, and it was an easy pick six. It wasn't his best game, absolutely not. He gets criticized for the interception that ended the game, and I think that's fair. I mean, it was 2nd and 1, and he takes a shot, throws a 40-yard bomb, underthrows it a little bit. It gets picked off by Tampa Bay, and they go on to win. But I understand why he did it, because he kind of reached, it seemed like, to me at least, he's reaching the point where he's like, I got to do something, okay? Yeah, it'd be just as easy to dump it off, get the first down, and it's 2nd and 1, get the first down and try again. But he just goes, look, everybody we have is hurt. Everybody's on the sideline right now. I don't have anybody, okay? I got to try to do something. The season's almost over, for the Chargers at least. Their shot at the playoffs is, well, now I guess it's not they're not technically mathematically eliminated yet. But they had to win that game. They had to win it. And Phillips just thinking, in my opinion, he's just going, I had to take a shot. I had to do something. That wasn't the reason they lost that game. It wasn't. They just got outplayed. Mike Evans is a beast. Jameis Winston is a hell of a quarterback. He's really impressed me this year. He looks great. I mean, he's not up to like Derek Carr. Not yet, at least. But he's a solid quarterback, and we just couldn't get a lot of pressure on him. Melvin Ingram missed at least 2 sacks that I saw, where he absolutely, there's no excuse, should have had a sack, and Winston somehow scored it out of there and didn't come down. So I don't know. It's just tough right now, and with all this talk of relocation and Mike McCoy coming back, I just find myself scratching my head and going, what the hell is going on? Aztecs, though, touched on them just a little bit. They go ahead and they go on and they win the Mountain West Championship. They beat Wyoming in Laramie. No easy place to play. It was on ESPN, nationally televised, and that puts them with Houston in the Las Vegas Bowl on the 17th. I'll be looking forward to that. I could spend a lot of time, just like I have in the past, especially the last couple of weeks, or at least certainly the last podcast, criticizing Rocky Long on some of his decisions and how the Wyoming game in the regular season, he lost by deciding to go for 2, and we lose because he didn't want to take the tie. He didn't want to take the risk in overtime. It's just he did the same thing. He did another decision that I go, what are you doing, man? But it got overlooked because it didn't end up completely hurting them, because San Diego State still won the football game. So I'm not really even going to get into it. I might get into it in a little bit, but they won in the tip of the cap. 10-3 right now. Got a shot to go 11-3. There's nothing wrong with a 10-win season. But I raised the question that I've asked before on this podcast. Is that the ceiling for this Aztecs team? I mean, what can they do to get to the next level? I'm just not sure. I mean, the Mountain West certainly doesn't help. The fact that they lose every time the very next week after they get ranked doesn't help. And the fact that they're, 1-8 against schools from Power 5 conferences over the last few years, that also doesn't help. But, like I said, a successful season nonetheless. Back, conference champions, back-to-back. Heading to a Las Vegas Bowl. Thank God it wasn't the Poinsettia Bowl. Could not handle that again. Lot to be happy about. Lot to, I think, digest and just kind of process and wonder how does this team get to the next level? We'll just have to wait and see. Donnell Pumphrey did not get into he's not going to be invited to the Heisman Award ceremony. That was announced this week. And yeah, East Coast bias, it's a real thing. There was not a single West Coast representative. I thought maybe Jake Browning from UW would have a shot. I thought Sam Darnold from USC would be at least in the conversation, even though, he joined the cause late and they had 3 or 4 losses there at USC. But I mean, it was very clear that if you view the Heisman more like the MVP, the most valuable player to their team, it's an easy sell, I think, with Sam Darnold. I'm sure it's an easy sell with a couple other players, but Sam Darnold, man, he was the reason that team turned it around and became one of the hottest teams in college football. Didn't make it, and there was no running back that was sent over him. There's just no running backs on the Heisman list. And 2 from Oklahoma, and then it was Baker Mayfield, Dede Westbrook, Deshaun Watson from Clemson, Lamar Jackson, who's been the front runner all year, and Jabril Peppers, the first defensive player, I think, since Manti Te'o. It's been 5 years since they've had a defensive player, and it's rare. But yeah, I mean, I think you could put that on, if you wanted to. I think you could put some of that on Rocky Long for the team's loss in Wyoming. I think that, and if San Diego State was undefeated, they'd have Donnell Pumphrey would be in New York. I promise that. They weren't. And so one of those games, I think, and at least in my opinion, directly falls on the coaching staff. So you could put blame there, I guess. He wasn't really involved. He wasn't in the mix too much over the last couple of games. A lot of teams, or a lot of voters, I should say, they didn't get a chance to see him. They just didn't. So it was fun while it lasted. It was fun to get the hype going. And San Diego State, they put the giant banner up on the side of one of the dorms, and that was cool. Pumphrey for Heisman, but it's not going to happen. I really think the East Coast bias was just too strong. Elsewhere in college football, before we get to it, we got Bernie Wilson joining us, Paul. Bernie Wilson, longtime bro. He's a bro. If you follow him on Twitter, he's a bro because every tweet he's got to throw in a bro and the fist bump emoji and all that. Love Bernie. He's a great follow on Twitter at Bernie Wilson. He's a longtime sports writer for the Associated Press. He's seen a lot over the last 20 years, 25 years, however long he's been writing for the AP. He's seen a lot here in San Diego. Some of the good, a lot of the bad. And so I'm going to pick his brain on the Chargers and the Aztecs, things I just talked about. Looking forward to that. The only other thing going on in sports, at least in college football, would be the rankings and the college football playoffs that we finally have an answer to. Yeah, a lot of compelling arguments for teams that missed the cut, like Michigan and Penn State primarily. But we got number 1 is going to be Alabama. They'll be playing number 4 Washington, and then Ohio State and Clemson. They're going to square off at number 2 and 3. And look, the committee got it right. I know. I'll eat some crow, I guess. Slice of humble pie, whatever you want to call it. Because I really wanted Michigan to be in there. And I really do believe that they are one of the top 4 teams. So I am backtracking a little bit. If you listened to my podcast last week of making a plea for Michigan to be in the Final Four, looking at everything, the selection committee, they got it right. Because even though I think Michigan was more deserving, them not having a game on Championship Saturday, that hurt them. If they would have had a shot to prove to the committee once again that they were a deserving team, maybe things would have been different. Maybe. I don't know. But how do you justify, the only team you can really argue against would be Ohio State, but they're like pretty unanimously viewed as the number 2 team by most people that have been following college football this year, because they're the only team in the top 4 that wasn't a conference champion. It's just, I just don't see how, unless Washington or Clemson lost, which they didn't, but unless they lost, I just don't see how you can take out a team that wins. You know, how do you drop a team that wins their conference championship that was already in the top 4? I just don't see how it works. And I think Penn State, you know, they got a fair argument. Like, hey, we just won our conference championship. It's the best conference in college football. What the hell, guys? And, you know, I think the argument against Washington was their strength of schedule, obviously, was incredibly weak. And the committee, you know, it's like, hey, do they want to send the message that, hey, you can schedule these cupcake games in September and it's okay as long as you win the conference and go, you know, 12-1 or anything like that? Because the NCAA, they're trying to steer away from that. They want teams to schedule big games. They want USC and Alabama week 1. And, you know, oh God, there's so many crazy games for week 1 this season. That's what they want. Because it's usually the week 4 of the NFL preseason. And so the NCAA can rule that weekend if they schedule the right games. And so they're trying to encourage schools to do that. So what is the message that the committee's sending to Washington and all the other teams out there when they say, we're going to let a team that schedules freaking Portland State and Idaho and Rutgers, you know what I mean? When they schedule all these weak teams at home and there's nothing exciting there, what's the message that they're sending, that that's okay to do? So I get the argument against the strength of schedule. I really do. But at the end of the day, when Washington's already ranked that high, you just can't justify dropping them. If you're following along, you can make the argument for Penn State that, hey, conference champs, won 9 in a row, yada, yada, yada. But the committee had already spoken that, hey, we think Washington's a top 4 team. Now, if they had previously ranked Washington below Penn State, like if Penn State was number 4, then it'd be the same thing. I just don't think you can drop a team that's already there. They go into their conference championship game and they win. How do you justify dropping them at that point? You know, there wasn't it wasn't biased towards any team or teams. It was just fair arguments that were pro one team, not anti another team. You know what I mean? You can make an argument for all the teams that got in. Even Clemson, who I think didn't pass the eye test for me all season long. They're soft. They were just skating by, but they did what they had to do. In college football, once you get to a certain point in the season, if you're in the top 5 or top 10, you just got to survive. Kind of a win and you're in sort of thing. And they won the ACC championship game on Saturday, so for them, yeah, it was win and you're in. For Michigan, yeah, they had a couple losses, and, you know, you could talk about how they didn't win their conference championship. They didn't play in their conference championship, but you could say, oh, well, one of those losses was on the road in Ohio State, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, great. You can make the argument for Penn State and what they did this season. You could make the argument for Wisconsin having a good season. I mean, not as strong of an argument because they lost to Penn State. And then Washington was like, hey, every team that you put in front of us, we beat. Aside from the soft schedule, I mean, at least, you know, the non-conference schedule, it's like, look, Stanford was a top 10 team. They beat them. Their only loss was to USC, who became one of the top teams in the country. They went on the road. They beat Washington State. They pulverized Washington State. They crushed them. They had, what was the other one? Utah on the road. So everybody that came into Washington's way, they beat handedly. So that's their argument. But I think the committee got it right when it's all said and done. Again, it'll be Washington and Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State. I'm looking forward to that. But hey, that's all I got. We're going to rehash some of that, a good amount of that actually, with Bernie Wilson, who I mentioned earlier. He's going to come on. I really want to talk to him about the Aztecs and the Chargers primarily. Like I said, the guy's been around for a while. He's covered sports here for 1991, I believe, is what it said on his Twitter bio. So he's seen a thing or two, and he knows a thing or two about a thing or two. So I'm looking forward to picking his brain about the Aztecs and what he thinks it's going to take for the Aztecs to reach the next level, and if they can do it with the current regime. And then the Chargers, where are we at? Are they moving? Are they not? Is McCoy coming back? Is he not? What the hell is going on the field? Lots to talk about with Bernie Wilson. That's coming up next. All right, not going to waste any more time. A lot to talk about in the world of sports here in San Diego. It was an exciting weekend. Well, I won't say exciting. I will say eventful. There was a lot going on in the San Diego sports world. So who better to bring on than Bernie Wilson? He's a longtime sports writer for the Associated Press, covers the Padres, the Aztecs, the Chargers, and pretty much everything in between. You can find him at just about any sporting event here in San Diego. He's on Twitter at Bernie Wilson. First time on the Rinder Report. Bernie, what's up, bro?
Not much, bro. Just hanging and banging out here in El Cajon.
Yeah, you know how we do out there in East County.
We live the big life.
Hey, you know what? Not a lot of people are out there going to rep East County. Somebody's got to do it. I guess that's on our shoulders, right?
Absolutely. It's us against the world.
Well, hey, Bernie, appreciate the time, man. Let's start. Did I miss anything there? Padres, Chargers, Aztecs. You show a little love for the San Diego Sockers, the Gulls. What else are you doing?
I'm getting my sunblock ready to cover the America's Cup in Bermuda next summer, so that's on the list too.
All right, Bermuda. There you go. Wasn't expecting that. That sounds awesome.
Well, sometimes it's sure better than sitting in a triple wide Charger media trailer. I got to tell you that much, bro.
Yeah. We'll get to that. We will get to the Chargers. Hey, I want to start with the Aztecs, the team that didn't completely piss me off this last weekend. Winning the Mountain West Championship, 27-24. They beat Wyoming. I know you've been following the team throughout the season over the last couple of years. 10-3. They're heading into the Las Vegas Bowl. I'm not prepared to necessarily call the season a failure because it's a 10-win season, but how would you describe how the season went for the Aztecs, given the expectations and now where they're at heading into a game against a pretty notable opponent in Houston?
Yeah, bro, I've never been able to figure out the Aztecs. I've been here since 91. Some years I cover them more intently than others. I do applaud Rocky Long for the job he's done. Unlike other coaches who've blown through here, this isn't his, he's not stepping stone yet like a bunch of other coaches at State, both in hoops and football. This is probably the job he'll retire from. But that said, and 10 wins is terrific. Consecutive Mountain West Conference championships, good for them. But it's just when they play in the shadow of the Pac-12, it's just, and I don't want to piss people off here, but it'd be nice if they could do better somehow. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know what it would take. But, the Vegas Bowl, hip, hip, hooray, they're always going to be weighed down by the Mountain West Conference. And by the way, you do know why they named it the Mountain West, don't you?
Because it rhymes with Mountain West above the rest?
No, because Little League was already taken. So, yeah, the season started out with, high hopes, great expectations, as it always does. As usual, some of them are way overdone. People were thinking that this team's going to be playing on New Year's Day. This team could be in the college football playoffs. There's always that crowd that gets excited. I mean, the Heisman hype was definitely merited for Pumphrey, but, how sad is it that the school spends, I can't remember how much it was, $5,000 or something on a big banner at Pumphrey on the side of a dorm at San Diego State when there aren't any Heisman voters looking at it. It's like, what the hell's the purpose of that?
Right.
I know they couldn't afford to put one in Times Square or near Madison Square Garden like the Oregon Ducks did. God, again, I can't even remember which quarterback that was, but I don't know, just a lot of stuff still reeks of being small time. I remember the failed Heisman campaign of Marshall Faulk, where the school literally did nothing and let Miami just absolutely steamroll them for what's his name, Gino Torretta. It didn't help that Falk missed the last couple of games with a knee injury, and then Miami came out here and just absolutely obliterated the Texters. But, to get back to your original question, there's always overblown expectations, just like there are with basketball. They clearly, that South Alabama game, it's like, what the hell was that? I mean, they just got their doors blown off, and then my gutty little Idaho Vandals a couple weeks ago beat that same South Alabama team. So I guess that means Idaho's better than, or maybe Idaho should be playing the Texters in the Vegas Bowl. We need a recount on that. And then the losing to Wyoming on that god awful call by Rocky, that was inexcusable when you don't have Pumphrey wasn't even on the field. And I believe Penny wasn't either. Because of that, and then getting their brains beat out at home by Colorado State, they had to go back up to Laramie. It would have been nice to have that game at Qualcomm, even though they won it up there, that's fine. But, my God, you don't want to go to Wyoming for anything, let alone a second game in 3 weeks. So, and now Pumphrey wasn't invited to New York, so he's not a Heisman finalist, and you can argue all day about that. But I guess overall you got to consider it a success. They won a championship and are in a bowl game, which is about all you can expect anymore in college football.
Now, Bernie, would I be wrong? Look. We all like Rocky Long as a person. This is nothing personal. I've been pretty critical of him on this podcast for quite a while now, in that I just don't know. I guess I don't know what the answer is to get the Aztecs to the next level, and apparently neither does he. So maybe that would help if I had the answer. But I just look at some of the decision-making that he has. You talked about Pumphrey and Penny not even being on the field in that Wyoming game. I look back, I was watching the game on Saturday night when he decided to not kick the field goal late in the fourth quarter, put him up 6. Instead, he goes for it on 4th and 7 or whatever it was. And it just means, look, it gets overlooked because they ended up winning the game either way. But I'm going, now Wyoming's only 2 passes away from field goal range and tying it up, as opposed to having to go the length of the field to hit the touchdown. I just don't understand some of the thought process there. I mean, can he get us to that next level, do you think?
That's $1 million question. Or actually, in bowl payout talk, maybe a $15 million question. I don't know. The Texters have always faced that question. There was a time when people thought they should be invited to join the Pac-10, but the Pac-12, which it is now, those are big-time research institutions, and San Diego State just doesn't fit that bill. And, again, when you play in the shadow of USC and UCLA, you got to figure something out. And these, coaches are paid an awful lot of money. The athletic directors paid an awful lot of money. I guess that they're just going to have to figure out a way to keep more and better kids here, or get in more and better kids, keep them from going to the Pac-12, keep them from going to other conferences. And, a lot of it is they're way down by the Mountain West. It's a small-time conference that does stupid things, like play a lot of games on Friday night, and I mean their bowl lineup is a mishmash. You know, the Techs win the conference last year and they go to Hawaii. They win it this year, they go to Vegas. You know, everything just seems all over the dial. So I don't know. I'd like to make a coach's salary and try to figure these things out, but I don't. And yeah, his coaching is confounding at times. And you know, again, at the risk of pissing people off, when he went for it and it failed, that's when, you know, the cynic in you thinks they deserve to lose. Mm-hmm. But they pulled one out, and, you know, he dodged the bullet up there on the high plains or the high mountains, whatever it is up there, and, you know, won the championship. But I don't know that there is an answer, because there just seem to be too many complications for them to ever hit the big time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Hey, last question, bro, on the Aztecs. Kind of just skipping over the bowl game, skipping over the Houston game, looking ahead to next year. What do you like about this team minus Donnell Pumphrey? You know, will not be on the squad next year. Christian Chapman, I didn't really see a whole lot of strides forward this season out of him. It just seemed like, obviously, when you got a three-headed monster in the running game that the Aztecs had, you didn't really need him to make a whole lot of improvements. Rashad Penny, though, coming back, he's confirmed it. He's going to come back for his senior season, and he's the guy that I have read constantly and heard experts, the pros, people like yourself, Bernie, that'll say he's the more NFL prototype guy. He's the guy that, you know, a team will find a place for a Donnell Pumphrey. Many teams will find a place for a Rashad Penny. And I think he's going to be incredibly exciting when he's the featured back next season. So, I mean, what have you seen out of him and out of the team that gets you excited for San Diego State football?
No, I agree. Penny, in you know, a term that is thrown around many places, including the NFL, he is a load. And, you know, when he's the guy, he should be an absolute load. And I guess they're just, with too many quarterback inconsistencies, they just need to hitch the Rocky Long wagon to him and let it rip. And I agree with you on the NFL ready thing. You know, as good as Pumphrey looks tearing through, I mean, let's face it, he ripped apart Cal, and then, you know, he did a lot of damage against Mountain West teams. But I don't know, he just doesn't seem like the NFL type. Maybe there'll be a place for him, maybe they're not, maybe there won't be, but, you know, there's the old eyeball test, and you see him make a nice run, and you think, oh, that's nice. He's playing against a Mountain West team, but then you see Penny, who is a load, rip off a nice run, and you think, yeah, this guy's got a chance to be playing, as they say, on Sundays.
Talking with Bernie Wilson, sports writer for the Associated Press, on Twitter at Bernie Wilson. Bernie, let's switch things up. Let's talk about the pro team here in San Diego that tosses the old pigskin around the queue. Our San Diego Chargers, at least for now, are San Diego Chargers. They lost 28-21 to the Texans most recently. Just another second half collapse. The season is incredibly all but over at this point. Technically there's 4 more times that we'll get to see them on Sundays, but season's over. What do you most associate with the second half collapses that they've had all season? I mean, they led 14-7 at the halfway point, taking on the Buccaneers. I mean, is it a lack of depth? Is it coaching decisions, player executions, a combo? I mean, what stands out to you the most? Because it's been a pattern now for most of this season, but also over the last couple of years, just these late game collapses. Well,
if you extend it over the last couple seasons, then the number one culprit has to be our very good friend, ball coach / bell cow McCoy.
That's fair, yeah.
It's just, you know, the old you are what your record is, you know, reflects totally on McCoy. All the things that make him the lovable Mike McCoy that he is, you know, the conservative play calling, the this, that, and the other thing. And, a team takes on the personality of its coach. I am a firm believer in that. And, we've seen enough in these Monday snoozers and Wednesday snoozers that, if he comes across to his players like he does to the media, I can see 53 guys just absolutely tuning him out, or rolling their eyes, or throwing spitwads at each other, or drawing funny pictures in their notebook that they're supposed to be taking notes on for whatever riveting speech ball coach McCoy has given them. And I think the problems start with him. And, the thing with injuries, every NFL ball squad has injuries to some degree. The key to overcoming those is to have good depth, if not great depth, and smart players. And, he always talks about the best 53 and the healthiest 46, blah, blah, blah. And it's very apparent that when frontline guys go down, this team is not capable of stepping up. So that is on the front office. Johnny Football Spanos and Tommy Football Telesco. I mean, they've made some nice picks here and there, but let's face it, it's a brutal 17-week stretch when you throw in the bye week, and you got to have guys ready to go. I know snaps are limited in practice, and starters get X many, and then second teamers it drops off, and third stringers more. But you have to be ready for injuries. It's just a part of the game, and thank God that the injuries haven't hit number 17, because if they did, you'd be looking at the West Coast version of the Cleveland Browns. That is absolutely a guarantee. But yeah, it's just and a lot of. The one thing I don't like about ball coach Bell Cal McCoy is, it's always execution. It's never the play calling. It's never the game plan. It's always, same BS on Monday. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Execution. It's always execution. So, the guy couldn't take credit or blame, if he needed to save his life. He just can't get up there and say, yeah, we screwed up, or maybe we should have had a different play call in there. Always execution. So that just shows you that, if they're not, the players aren't executing, they're either not being coached right, or they just can't handle it, or maybe both.
Bernie Wilson, no holds barred tonight, just straight fire.
Hey, when you live in a bunker overlooking Santee, you got to be ready for the worst, babe. You know how it is. You got the high ground. We have high ground against Santee to some extent, but you still have to be prepared.
There you go. I love it. Hey, I agree with everything that you said on McCoy, and kind of just connecting it with Rocky Long, the other ball coach here in San Diego. I found myself having to, I was contradicting myself, because I sit there and I yell at the television on Sundays and screaming at McCoy, like, why are you doing this? Why are you calling a timeout here? Why are you coaching not to lose as opposed to coaching to win? What is going through your mind right now? And then when Rocky Long makes these gutsy decisions, I'm like, well, at least he's going for it, so I can't really yell at him. I can't get too upset. All that being said, Mike McCoy, what are the odds he's still the coach next year? Because those talks have been really heating up, and I'm sure that has to do with, more than anything else, the fact that the Chargers just will not be making the playoffs, or even contending to, making a push at the playoffs. That's kind of all we have left to talk about, is Mike McCoy, is his future with the team here. I just don't see how there's any reason he should be coming back. He's going to have spent the entire 2016 season in last place. They will not be climbing out of the cellar. And you're not just looking at, I get it, the injuries, and there were a couple of games that you can't really even pin on him for losing. That was, directly correlated to player execution, sure. But over the body of his time here in San Diego, it's pretty clear, the X's and O's of everything. What have you been hearing about his job security?
Well, knowing the franchise as I do, from having covered it for many nightmarish seasons, I would think that the odds of him coming back are right around 100%. And here's why. It's not, they'll find a way to say, well, it was the injuries. Mike was just hamstrung. And to his credit, ball coach / bell cow McCoy will say that, injuries aren't an excuse. It's got to be the quote-unquote next man up, one of his great cliches. Although I've heard some subliminal, he'll have banter with some of his favorites in the media corps, and every once in a while he'll let it slip that, injuries have been a factor, both this year and last year. But I'm guessing that the front office will say, Mike didn't really get a full chance because of the injuries to the ball squad and blah, blah, blah. And you got to remember that after this ball squad went 4-12 last year, we all motored out to the media triple wide the Monday afterward, expecting that, ball coach would be given his walking papers. Instead, ball coach came out for the season-ending newser, still employed, and a couple days later, I think it was later that day, they sent out a press release saying the ball coach will be back, and they blew out the offensive coordinator and about 6 assistant coaches. And then 2 days later, we had the season ender with Tom Telesco, and he said the reason ball coach / bell cow McCoy was back was because they believed in him. They had confidence in him. So, I mean, this franchise is so dysfunctional. Any other ball franchise would blow a guy out, no questions asked, after a 4-12 season, the entire staff. Instead, they bring him back, they make him, or some, Telesco probably told him who to fire, Frank Reich, and then a bunch of other assistants. Ball coach doesn't have to fall on his sword. He's back, hooray. It's the Charger way. I mean, they kept Norville Turner on too long. They kept A.J. Smith on too long. Part of it is it's an NFL thing, not just a Charger thing, but the Chargers are our local heroes, so we'll pin it on them. They cannot admit a mistake when one of their hires just doesn't work out. So to fire ball coach McCoy / bell cow McCoy would be to admit a mistake. And don't forget, who did they promote after the 2012 season to a high rank in football operations, none other than Johnny Football Spanos, the son of Dean Spanos, the team chairman, and the grandson of owner Alex Spanos. And Johnny Football helped make the decision to hire Tommy Telesco as GM, and then Tom was added to the Fun Kids Club, which still included Johnny Football Spanos, and they settled on ball coach / bell cow McCoy. So it's this happy little, family up there on the second floor. And for whatever reason, Johnny Football and Tommy Football don't see any need to part ways yet with ball coach / bell cow McCoy. But I will tell you, East County Bro, that if they do move to L.A., ball coach / bell cow McCoy will not go over well with the L.A. media. I worked in L.A. for 3 years. I still have, some connections up there, and his act will get old about 3 minutes into his first press conference. And I hope that Bill Plaschke of the L.A. Times is sitting in the front row and hammers him just as hard as he hammered Manny Ramirez when Manny came back from his steroid suspension. I really do, because, if you want to try to roll with the big boys in L.A., ball coach / bell cow McCoy is not the guy to have as the public face of your franchise.
Yeah, well, in the words of old AJ, it is what it is, right, Bernie?
It is what it is. I know that was a long-winded question, but it is what it is.
Yeah, well, you kind of touched on it. This will be my last question. The relocation, the only other thing besides ball coach bell cow McCoy's job security that there is left to talk about at this point for the Chargers is relocation. And look, last week there were a set of tweets that went just viral throughout San Diego, and I don't know if I've ever seen just a couple of tweets cause the uproar that those did from Jim Trotter here in San Diego, just amongst the San Diegans, thinking, oh my God, it's the end of the world because somebody tweeted a couple of things. But ever since then, the talks have kind of been heating up, and not just because of those tweets, but a lot of mindsets have been changing recently over the course of maybe the last couple of months. And again, maybe that's just connected to the play on the field. I don't know, morale just being down. But where are we at here? The Chargers heading up to Carson?
Well, up until today, I was led to believe that Dean Spanos was petrified of having to move to L.A. But, today the mayor met with the stadium point man, and just the absolute lack of buzz. I can't get a straight answer out of anybody on what they talked about, but it just sounds like they were talking to keep the lines of communication open. It doesn't sound like anything new was exchanged or anybody's got any great ideas anymore. And the fact that, if Dean Spanos says he wants to stay here so badly and he asked the voters last month for $1 billion subsidy, the fact that he hasn't sat down with the mayor since then tells me now I'm firmly of the belief that they are going to be stupid enough to move to L.A. And by stupid enough, I mean, yes, their franchise value is going to rise significantly. How much, we don't know, but it'll go up because L.A. is L.A. That's why they're the Los Angeles Angels, not the Anaheim Angels. But it's just, I don't know if they understand the extent to which they will be low, not only on the overall totem pole, but on the football totem pole, and how L.A. really doesn't seem to want them. I mean, if you look, the Rams should be number one, but they stink. SC had a resurgence this year, and depending on a couple guys coming back or going to the NFL, they should be just as strong, if not stronger, than next year. They're stronger next year. Hopefully UCLA will get out of its own way with Jim Moore as their head ball coach. And then if the Chargers go, they'll be number 4 just in football. But overall, they'll be behind the Rams, the Trojans, the Bruins, the Lakers, the Dodgers, the Kings, the Angels, the Ducks. And I better put UCLA basketball really high up there because after they beat Kentucky Saturday, they're now number 2 in the AP poll. And absolutely loaded for, wait for it here, Bear. Get it? Bruins, Bear. And if the Chargers go up there and drop another, I mean, they're not going to finish better than 7-9, and drop a Rams-esque 7-9 or a 6-10, whatever, forget it. It'll be over before it even got started. So I just don't know that they realize that. Maybe they do, and maybe it's I think last year Dean Spanos made it very clear that his family matters. It's not about the fans. It's not about a 50-year relationship with San Diego. It is his family, okay? His family, not our family or your family, his family. So if he's prepared to do it, then, it's on him. It's not on City Hall. It's not on the voters or anything. And if they are dumb enough to play in StubHub, they're probably going to be playing in front of a majority of fans pulling for the other team. And I cannot wait to see a Raiders-Chargers game at StubHub Center. I mean, I don't know how Raider fans will be able to afford the exorbitant ticket prices that the Chargers are going to charge, but they'll find a way to get in there. They could outnumber Charger fans 26,000 to 1,000. So that'll be fun to see.
Yeah, I mean, if they really believe, the thing that made me laugh the most, at least last year throughout this whole process that we're just repeating now, this year was 25% of their fan base comes from Los Angeles. Really? Where are you getting that information? I just find that hard to believe.
Back when I communicated with Mark Fabiani, and I haven't for more than a year, I asked him one day, could you please provide data on this 25%, either by last name, by street address, by zip code, area code, suburbs, whatever. And he said, "Oh, we'll get back to you on that one." And so there are fans up there. I know some. They've been longtime fans. I see them at the tailgates every Sunday. But a lot of that is believed to be ticket brokers. So, that's just another disingenuous thing that they've thrown against the wall. The other thing is Dean Spanos had 22 years where his football team was the only NFL ball squad in Southern California. 22 years. Mm-hmm. Yet he failed to build on that. And so now he's going to go up and play second fiddle to Stan Kroenke. I mean, it'll be great to have that explained to us one of these days. That is, but Dean doesn't quite have it in him to sit down in front of the mainstream media and sit there and honestly answer any and all questions. He only does interviews with reporters who have been vetted for softness or agree not to ask certain questions. So I don't know that we're ever going to get anything honest out of old Dino.
Yeah, no, what we'll get a video from Chargers.com of him with his own employees asking him his questions.
Right, like the first question, "Gosh, Dean, you're great, aren't you?" "Gosh, Dean, you're going to live in Newport Beach, aren't you?"
Yeah.
"Gosh, Dean, my question is, gosh, Dean, how are you going to enjoy the 405? Gosh, Dean, hope you have a helicopter ready to go, because that's going to be the easiest way to get from your splashy Newport Beach house to Carson on Sundays."
Good old Carson. God, again, more power to them. If they really don't think that they're going to be second fiddle to, they're going to be the third most liked team, football team, at least in Los Angeles. And that's like at best, because they're going to be behind the Rams, the SC, who you mentioned, and then even the Raiders are going to get more love wherever they go.
I think no better than fourth, because, UCLA stunk this year. But if you go to a game at the Rose Bowl, UCLA has a huge loyal following.
Yeah.
My kid is a freshman there, and so and my wife went to USC, so we've seen a lot of both sides of this for years, more so this year at UCLA. But there are, even when they're bad, there are hardcore fans who have been fans for decades, or they've had a connection with the school for decades or generations. And the USC's fan base runs far deeper than the alumni base. I mean, there are a lot of people up in LA who didn't go to USC and probably never could have had they wanted to, yet they're loyal fans. And all of a sudden, Dean Spanos is going to try to bring his unlovable franchise up there, for lack of a better term, and try to fit in, and it's just not going to work. And he will, no matter. And remember, nobody has seen the deal that supposedly exists between them and the Rams. So we have to take their word that it's, they're going to be equals and whatnot. But Kroenke's going to own all the development around the Inglewood Stadium, and no matter how equal this agreement is, they're always going to come across as tenants and second fiddle. So, have at it, Dean. Best of luck to you.
Yeah, I think that's really all we can say at this point. Bernie, I will let you go, man. I really appreciate the time. A lot of good stuff there, and a lot to sit there and think about.
All right, bro. Always good catching up with you. And some night we'll have to stagger over to Poncho's for a margarita.
I love it. Let's do it. Take it easy, bro.
You too, bro.
All right, Bernie Wilson on Twitter, at Bernie Wilson. Sports writer for the Associated Press. Good stuff out of him. Really, like I said, I mean, no holds barred from Burn Dog. And I can't say that I really disagree with any of that. I mean, from Rocky Long and some of the decisions he's made and where he's taken the program and where Mike McCoy is at with the Chargers and where we're at with relocation. It's kind of a mess here in the San Diego sports world, at least for football, for the most part. I mean, I'm being too that's being too harsh on the Aztecs. I will take that a step down. They made it to the Vegas Bowl. They're playing Houston. A win would be great. They won the Mountain West title 2 years in a row now. Good on them. Really appreciate that from Bernie. Great stuff. So That's going to do it. I don't have anything more to say. It was just fun to sit back and listen to Bernie just tee off on a couple of topics there. No, thanks for listening. You can go on Twitter, you know, my little obligatory shameless plug here, you know, go on iTunes. That's where this podcast can be found. On iTunes, you just hit subscribe. It's right on your phone, your computer, whatever you listen to your podcasts on. You can just subscribe right there. As soon as I press submit, a few minutes later, it gets sent right to your phone. You can also go to the rinderreport.blogspot.com. Everything, podcasts and interviews, everything gets archived there. And you can follow me on Twitter at ThePollarBearSD. Thanks for listening in, and we will talk to you next week.